Welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV. I'm Jeff Allison, and thank you for watching.
Okay, so today's project is to see if we can get a firewall like this one made. This is on a 68 Mustang. Some of the things we're looking at is this one was originally all rusty, but also on this side had an area where the air conditioning, heater core, and all that were popped out this way. We're going to do complete under the dash unit. I hate the cowl vents and stuff since they're just a great place for moisture and leaves and other crud to collect and drawn out, so a lot of this sheet metal has already been replaced. If you watch some other videos, you can see some of that being done. So today, the goal is to make this firewall panel, and we want it basically flat. I'm using a thick enough piece of material that rolling a bead in it would be pretty darn difficult. And what I've got here is about 54.5 at the bottom, and at the top I believe it's right at 54 5/8. I can't really get a good measurement on it right there. So right at 54 5/8. We've got just a little angle in the two sides. We'll split that. And then of course we've got to make this hole. The hole's actually one of the easiest things. This piece here will be coming out at a later date, but leaving it there just to keep everything square for now. So I'm going to show you how I got to this panel, and then I'll be starting to get this one ready to weld in here pretty quick. And I'm going to get rid of this upper flange and roll all this in so you get a nice smooth finish on it. So take you to the workbench and we'll show you how that next, or how we got to where we're at. This is 14 gauge, probably a little heavier duty than it really needs to be. 16 would have done just fine. The place I buy my steel from had a couple of cutoffs that were fairly inexpensive to buy, and then I was able to have him go ahead and shear my length and width that I wanted to start with. And that, in this case, I'm starting 12 inches long, and this one's showing 55 7/8 inches, which gives me about enough room for a 5/8 inch flange on each end. Of course, it's a little wider at the bottom than it is the top when we flange it. And then I'll trim that flange down to fit exactly into the car. Obviously, we need to put a big arch across the top of this so that we match the firewall on the Mustang. Poster board's one of my favorite pieces. If nobody will tell the U.S. Post Office, I'll tell you my other secret. You go in there and you get their free boxes that you use for, if it fits, it ships. They're really nice thickness on their boxes, and so I tend to use a lot of those as well. Get this shear cleared off here. Get myself a pretty good straight line on here. And you only need about 4 inches of material. Of course, it needs to be the full width. For those of you who watched the other video, you've already seen me make this stand that we're using. So we're going to measure off 4 inches and get us 2 pieces that we can use for the pattern. There we have 2 straight pieces of material to cover our 56 inch roughly length. We're going to use the top edge of this piece of sheet metal as our guide to get them lined up. We're going to tape these together. A couple of small pieces on here will hold it to the sheet metal so I can hold the lap to it. Now what that does, that tells us the top edge of our cardboard, poster board, is exactly in line with the top edge of our sheet metal. Straight or not, it is straight. I checked it was square, but even if it was a little out of straight, by having this the same, when we transfer that cardboard up the sheet metal to meet the top curve on the firewall, we gain, pretty quickly, we gain knowledge of where the whole thing fits together. And keep it all tied together real well. As we slip this post board up the sheet metal, once it's mounted to the firewall, clamped in, it gives us a place to draw our pattern, and we know we're equal distance. So the next trick, while we've got it all laid out here, we're going to put us a mark down this cardboard. And because we sheared this 4 inches, and I wasn't super careful about making sure it was exactly 4 inches, what's again critical is the fact that we're going to be moving off of that line and moving upwards. So we're going to finish getting this tape securely together. Put a mark on here which way is up, so that if we were to drop the piece of poster board, we don't get confused with which way it's supposed to be pointed and lose our orientation. All right. Now, line it back up with so now that we've got that done, go ahead and take these little tabs of tape off. I'm going to set this piece aside for a few minutes. And we're going to go ahead and get our flanges scored and bent in. Now I have this little roll around press, brake, shear, kind of does a little bit of everything. And it's great for what it does. It will not bend 14 gauge sheet metal all by itself. My other brake actually won't do it either. 16 gauge is about all it can handle. This, they rated it 18. I bent a little 16 in it. It will do all right with 16, but it does really well if we score this and get it kind of about halfway cut through before we put it in there. So the first trick is to find the center of our sheet metal. Like I said, we're working with 55, and it's supposed to be about 55 and 7/8. It's just a tiny bit long. Do a little math already. 27 and 15/16 should be the center. I'm going to mark that. And it's always good to check it from the other side, see if your math is right. And we're within about a 1/16 of an inch. This piece of sheet metal is just a hair long. We use our square. Get ourselves a center line. So there's our center line. So once we've got our center line drawn, we can work from that center line to the edges of our flange. And what I have is the dimension for the overall width of the firewall. I know I want everything centered off that. And one of the important things is as we bend this metal up, we're going to you have to kind of think of it as you're going to gain the thickness of the metal. Well, this is 14 gauge, it's less than 1/8 of an inch, but you add that to both ends, and we end up making our firewall panel too long if we don't account for that. So half of the width of our firewall at the top comes out to 27 1/4 inches. I'm going to burn probably 2 inches here, so I'm sitting on 29 1/4. I'm going to come over here to the 2-inch mark. My first mark. Then I'm going to do the same thing down here on the bottom. Come out to 29. The bottom is 27 3/16. I'm going to line that up. 29 3/16. Burn 2 inches. Put myself another mark. Use a straight edge then. Just got to compensate for the width of my pin. And there we have it. That's where we want our flange. Now, if we bent it, like I was just saying, if we bent that right on that line, we're going to gain a little under 1/8 of an inch if we bend right on that line. So one of the tricks we're going to do is we're going to come back in here, and I'm going to mark the second line parallel to the first, and in approximately the thickness of the metal. And I'm just eyeballing this. And I'm going to bend on that one. Hey, just as a side note here, this is basically what we're trying to eliminate. This was a factory AC car, so it has the AC cut out. It's pretty rough over the years. But I don't want that big hump in my firewall, so this is basically what the goal was to eliminate, was this piece of sheet metal right here. All right, so the goal here, the plan, is to score that line. What I'm using is a grinder, a cutoff wheel on it. I'm using this as a straight edge. What I'm able to do then, put my wheel right on top of the line that I want to cut. Get it lined up all the way down. It's a pretty heavy piece of angle iron and it doesn't really move around a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and score this, and then we'll show you how to bend this. The goal is to get about halfway through the piece of sheet metal, which I've now done. And with that scored, my brake here will nice bend in it. Doesn't matter which way you bend the first one, but it will matter that you match the second one. And I'm not going to be bending this other end today, since this is just a panel that I can show you what we're doing. I'll be using it again I've got a second Mustang here that I'm going to be doing almost exactly the same thing to. And for this little brake, you just kind of eyeball it, get it in the middle, and squeezing that down in there pretty good. Got our little flange. Okay, so we got that out of the brake there. And I got just a little bit more bend down here than I really need. I'll take some of that back out. That looks good. I've got just a little over the 90-degree point. Anyway, so now that I got that with a nice bend in it, and that'll act as a flange on one side of the firewall, what we're going to want to do is get our cardboard back on here. So know the orientation. It's a matter of just lining it up, taping it onto the sheet metal. We don't want it to move this time. Like I said, normally I'd go ahead and bend the flange on both sides, but since this is for a car that I haven't even started yet, I really don't want to put a flange in it and find out I was an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch off and just waste the material. Because while it wasn't terribly expensive, it's not cheap. So with that done, we'll take it over, we'll lay it up against the hole in the firewall. I'll show you that. And then I'll show you how we scribe the line so that it matches the arch on that firewall. We now have this sheet metal clamped to the firewall, the hole where it was anyway. Put a little piece of tape on here in a couple of places to keep the cardboard from moving. And for today, I'm going to put a piece of tape around this side down here since I didn't build this other flange in and clamp it off properly. But with this done, now we can use a set of dividers. It's like a compass from grade school, but both ends are sharp. There's no pencil, although compass would work just fine too. You need something fairly large so that you have plenty of room to scribe. What the goal is to get you to right below this flange, even though it's going to be going away in time. I want to be right below it, and I want to be real close to the top edge of the paper, especially right here at the center. And the reason for that is so I'm wasting as little sheet metal as possible. I want most of this 12 inches. I could get away with down to about 11 1/4 and still have all the coverage I want, but 12 gives me plenty of room. I can always trim it later if I need it. So then the goal, to lay that up there, make sure you got everything where you want it, and we're still just a little short. There we go. And you just take it and you drag it. Of course, if I had a pencil on there, you can see the line a little better, but definitely when I say just standing right here, I can see it really well. And drag it across. And then do the same thing on this other side. Starting at approximately the same place. And I have some waves in this sheet metal right here, so I'll have to even those out on my own. The great thing is, once you get one side marked, you can always fold it over and use it as a pattern for the other side to duplicate so you get them symmetrical. And I'm going to highlight this line here, mostly so you guys can see it. I know I'm no artist, so my line won't be nice and smooth and pretty. And then you can see it drops off a lot quicker on this side over here than it does in the middle. Okay, so with the line marked, you guys can see it, and I'm no artist. I didn't draw it very well. Using scissors, I'll follow the actual scribe line I did with the calipers, or the dividers rather. Okay, so now that I've got it marked, I'm going to take a pair of scissors, I'm going to cut that out, so I'll take this loose. Then I'll bring it over here one more time and I'll lay it on there and just fine tune it. Use a marker or whatever with it slid up in there, and I'll show you a little bit of that. There's my cutout pattern. And I've held it up here numerous times until I was happy with the shape of it. Another trick you can use is with the sheet metal, I had it clamped at the corners right up here at the highest point on both sides. You can cheat, drop your sheet metal down an inch or two, and tape this back on there, and just draw some extra lines. Use a straight edge from the line that you had. I'll show you over, and move up so that you can get this straight again, and that'll give you a nice solid surface to work from. But whatever method you use, get your arch right. Once you're happy with it, then you can tape your pattern back on your sheet metal in the original location. Okay, so I'm working with two different pieces of cardboard here just so you can see the difference. Use this one, use a pair of scissors, cut the arch. You end up with something like this. I then refined it a few times. Okay, so one of the tricks you can use to refine that arch, no, I don't have a 6 foot long straight edge, so I just taped two yardsticks together. Lay the yardsticks up on this piece of sheet metal, line the bottom edge up with your original line, mark a new line, and then measure the distance between this line and your new line. Ours works out to 1 3/8 inches. So whereas before, when I put this sheet metal on the car, I had this corner, and what would be the far side corner, I had these right up in the corners of the arch. I kind of talked about that before. And now, I'm going to want to drop this corner down 1 3/8 inches to make up this difference on that line. So by shifting the sheet metal up 1 3/8 inches, I can take my arch form to my new line, get it on there. When I go back over to the car, I can keep checking this. And you may end up doing this a couple times as you cut your form. You may end up way up here. Another trick is you know that much of the material in this corner is going to be coming off. So cut it fat, meaning don't cut right on the form. Go ahead and trim off within maybe 1/4 inch. And that'll let you keep sliding this panel up, giving you a nice solid surface for your cardboard to sit on. You could also make up another panel out of some scrap metal and use it. But the goal is just to have this where it'll lay flat. And you keep working it into that corner and trimming and using scissors until you have a nice smooth arch and you're real happy with the fit and finish of the cardboard. If you don't get the cardboard right, the sheet metal's just not going to fit right. And you can fill some of it with weld, but you just add work for yourself. Okay guys, so once you get the arch cut on your paper, you're happy with that. Lay that back on your original line. Get it all centered up straight between your flanges. You're happy with it. Take your grinder. Score that real slow. Don't try and cut all the way through in one shot. I usually just go ahead and get it on there, tape it, and then I fold my paper back and cut it and keep laying my paper back over, my cardboard back over until I'm happy with the shape. That way I'm not ending up damaging my form and end up with having to make another one or not get quite the right shape. And then once you get close, you can either keep cutting on it with that grinding wheel, keep working your way in, and it'll grind down just a little bit. You wear out your blades for your cutting wheels pretty fast that way. Or you can take a flap wheel or a die grinder or whatever and just clean up that edge, get rid of the burrs, and until you have a nice smooth finish and it fits the firewall. Don't be afraid to go over there and test fit it 15 times. Make sure you get happy until you're happy with it. As far as this area right here, this is where the original firewall master cylinder and steering column protrusions were, and I'm wanting to reuse that one piece of the original firewall. So I've already cut this panel out, and I'll be showing you later in another video when I go to actually weld this in. Like I said, I'm not quite ready to weld this in. The only thing to make it ready to start tacking in would be to drill the holes in each end, probably a 1/4 inch hole, probably one every inch or inch and a half down through there, and then you can plug weld through those. This car happens to also be getting a roll cage, and I want that roll cage to come down through the dash and tie into the frame rails and through the floor pan. Because of that, I haven't decided whether the dash is going to be removable yet, and until I make that decision, I really don't want this firewall in the way, because if I decide to leave the dash welded in the way they did it at the factory, then I need the access from the backside to get in there and weld put all my welds in. If I decide to go ahead and take the dash out and make it removable in some fashion, then I can go ahead and weld this in. I'm going to have to make the decision pretty soon which method I'm going to use, whether leaving this out or taking the dash out. Right now that's a structure helping hold the car together, and if I decide to take the dash out, I really already need to have this in place or some additional tubing welded in places, and to keep the structure of the car sound, so that as I take more and more of the factory sheet metal out and add my own, I don't compromise the shape of the car. I want it to remain straight. As rusty as this car was, it had not been in a wreck, and so it's actually a very straight car. Just needed a lot of sheet metal repair, which was one reason to go ahead and do as extensive a project as we're doing on it. Jeff with Allison Customs. Hope some of these projects are inspiring you to do some of your own, or teaching you how to do some of your own. Maybe just showing you some techniques on how you could do it. Let me know if there's anything I can add, or if there's projects you want to see. Glad to try and find something here in the shop. Future projects are going to include welding in the transition panel that we did in a previous video, making and welding in some floor pans, and of course welding in our firewall. We also have a 66 Chevelle in the shop. It's out getting soda blasted right now, so once it gets back, I'll get started on some projects with it, mostly some rust repair before we get into some custom work there. And again, I want to thank you for watching. Hope these projects inspire you to get out and work on your own vehicles.
Thanks for watching Allison Customs Project Car TV. Like us on Facebook and check us out at AllisonCustomsOnline.com.